Well, in just a few days, Joe Biden is going to be sworn in as president after the most controversial, contested, and crooked election in our history. Now, just to make sure that none of the 74 million Americans who voted for President Trump forget how much they hate him and us, Democrats in Washington impeached the president for a historic second time. This time, they used the phony excuse that he is responsible for the awful and inexcusable criminal assault on our Capitol by a group of anarchists who made up a very small number of the tens of thousands of people who attended a rally earlier in the day. Most of the people there were unaware that anything had even happened until they got back to their homes or hotels and saw it on the news. Now, while President Trump could have and maybe should have spoken sooner and more forcefully to denounce the riot, I've carefully read and listened to his entire speech that day. And to say that he caused it, it's ludicrous. But don't take my word for it. The most distinguished constitutional scholars of our land who neither supported nor voted for Donald Trump have dismissed allegations of President Trump having incited a riot as nonsense. But Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and the angry mob of congressional Democrats decided that impeaching Donald Trump in the hours before he leaves office will somehow be good for the country. Now, these are the same Democrats who joined with the media all last summer in actually defending and supporting the rioting and looting of American cities and the deadly assaults on police officers all across the land.
What you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
I don't care that much about statues.
Shouldn't that be done by shouldn't that be done by a commission or the city council, not a mob in the middle of the night throwing it into the harbor?
People will do what they do.
And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
There's a fire going on behind you, dude. Don't know if you missed that or not. Look, no matter how many times I see those clips, I still have a hard time believing my ears. Meanwhile, conservatives condemned the lawless anarchy in our streets then and equally and forcefully condemned it when it happened in D.C. on January the 6th. There should be no double standards. But the left in America has gone way beyond a double standard. They have no standards, just emotional outrage, hate, and blind bigotry toward everyone who won't surrender to their iron fist. The second phony impeachment is being done without any evidence presented, no hearing, no witnesses, certainly no due process. You thought about this, serial killers like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer were given more due process than President Trump. And when a mob, whether it's rioters or members of Congress, and the media deny judicial process and rush straight to a verdict and sentencing, it's not justice. This is one mob reacting to another mob, and that is the logic of a lynching. I sure wish that members of Congress were as concerned about the destruction of the places of business owned by law-abiding citizens in Seattle, Portland, Minneapolis, New York, or Los Angeles as they were by the destruction of where they do their business. And soon, yes, it'll be President Biden. He continues to claim that he wants healing and unity. But is that what he expects will result from the condescending rage directed toward the half of America who voted for President Trump? Look, I'd love to see the country come together and act like America again. But I'm not going to march willingly behind those who truly believe that voices like mine ought to be closed off from social media, are kept from employment, are freely harassed in restaurants, shopping centers, or public places. So if Joe Biden wants to unify the country to respect the rule of law for all, stop big tech from crushing competitors and conservatives, and move toward ending poverty, build some roads, stand up to China, and take care of our military and our vets. If you do that, I'm all in. But if you keep your pledge to push abortion even to the moment of birth, and want taxpayers to fund the folly of letting 7-year-old kids surgically change their gender, open the borders of our country with no controls, punish work by taxing the people who have jobs to redistribute their money to those who refuse to work, and then force churches and faith-based colleges and organizations to surrender to views that violate the teachings of the Bible, then count me out. That's not asking for my cooperation. That's asking for my surrender to an agenda that's antithetical to my faith, my family, and my freedom. And that's not a call for unity, but uniformity. It's not asking me for tolerance, but obedience. And it's not a call for healing, but for more hurt and hate. And to that, I'm pretty sure I speak for many of the 74 million Americans who will respectfully say, no thanks. This week, the House voted to impeach President Trump a second time, making him the only president in American history to have been impeached twice. My next guest represented the president during the first impeachment, and he might do it again. But it's not because he's a Trump supporter or even a Republican, because he's neither one. It's because he believes in the Constitution, and he believes a legal system that treats everyone equally, even a president. Please welcome Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz. Professor, did anything the president say in his speech on January 6th incite a riot?
Certainly not, and certainly it doesn't constitute an impeachable offense. It was completely protected by the Constitution. It was pablum compared to what Brandenburg, the man who was convicted in Brandenburg versus Ohio, and a unanimous Supreme Court reversed his conviction. It was pablum compared to what civil rights leaders and suffragettes and labor leaders and radicals and people of all stripes do when they go to Washington. They say, go to the Senate, confront them, get in their face, show them how strong we are, don't back down. Those are fighting words, and fighting words are part of political rhetoric protected by the Constitution. So the other thing the Congress did on the day it broke its record by impeaching somebody twice, it also broke its own record by violating the Constitution on 6 different occasions, 6 different clauses of the Constitution in one day. It violated the First Amendment. It violated the impeachment criteria under the Constitution. It violated the Bill of Attainder clause by saying he could be put on trial as a private citizen after he leaves. It violated due process by not giving him an opportunity and his lawyers an opportunity, on and on and on, to have broken that record of so many constitutional violations in one day. For what? In order to end the presidency a few days earlier and leave us with a legacy of a broken Constitution? It's just not the right thing to do.
I've heard you mention that this is going to lead to every party out of power using impeachment as a process just to gig the other side. And true to form, sure, a Republican legislator introduced articles of impeachment on Kamala Harris just this week. So I guess we're already seeing what you prophesied. Didn't know you were a prophet, but there you are, right, a professor and a prophet.
Oh, you know, the Talmud says that prophecy ended with the destruction of the Second Temple, and he who tries to prophesy is either a fool or a knave, and I hope I'm neither. But look, it's going to become, look, if you were to announce that you want to run for president in 2024, you'd be a very strong candidate. The Democrat-controlled House and Senate could impeach you, a private citizen, in order to stop you from running. It has turned impeachment into a weaponized, political, normal thing to be used politically instead of an extraordinary measure to remove a president who's committed treason, bribery, other high crimes and misdemeanors. It's so in violation of the framers' intent. It's what Hamilton called the most dangerous thing, to allow impeachment to go forward simply because you have the votes to do it. And that's exactly what the Democrats did.
Let me assure you that I will not be running in 2024 or any other year. I'm done running. I've been there, done that. So we're going to let somebody else experience that joy. troubling to
Well,
me.
you're only saying this because you don't want to get impeached. That's all. You're only, that your Sherman statement
Yes.
is not credible. It's only because you don't want to be impeached. You'd be a great president.
I'll say what Abraham Lincoln said about being run out of town on a rail. If it weren't for the honor of it, I'd just soon pass. What is troubling most to me, Professor, is that there was no due process. It's one thing to say we're going to charge someone, we're going to present the evidence against them, but then we're going to give them a defense. In this case, the House rushed to a process which they did not give him a defense, nor did they produce any evidence. As a constitutional law perspective, from your vantage point, why should every American, even the people who hate Donald Trump, be concerned about that precedent?
Because what they did to Donald Trump today, they can do to a Democrat tomorrow, and they can do to you the day after tomorrow. If Congress claims the authority to put private citizens on trial, we go back to the pre-revolutionary British system where Parliament tried people, and that was called a Bill of Attainder. And the framers of the Constitution explicitly prohibited Congress from passing bills of attainder, which means Congress has no jurisdiction to try people who are not currently in office. And even if they start the trial while he's still in office, the minute he leaves, 12 o'clock noon, January 20th, the Senate loses all jurisdiction over him as a private citizen. And if they claim jurisdiction over him, they're going to claim jurisdiction over you. It's McCarthyism all over again, but McCarthyism of the left rather than the right, the McCarthyism that I grew up with and fought against in the 1950s.
You were a part of the legal team that defended him in the first impeachment. Do you expect that if this thing does actually end up in the Senate and go to trial, as they impeach a private citizen, will you be on that legal team again?
I think it would be a mistake to have the president present a substantive defense in front of the Senate. I think his best approach would be to deny the power of the Senate to try him and to take the case to court rather than to have him subjected to a partisan or even a bipartisan vote in the United States Senate. So I don't see any room for a lawyer. Lawyer had no role to play during the impeachment. Nobody called on any lawyer to defend the president. And I don't think a lawyer has a real role to play. This is political theater, and I'm neither a politician nor an actor. So I don't really want to participate in a show trial. I think the challenge should be made in the courts against the power of the Senate to put on trial an ordinary citizen.
Some have suggested that the reason that Nancy Pelosi has pushed for this and the Democrats have gone along is that they want to somehow disqualify President Trump from running again in 2024. Right. Is that a legitimate argument? Would they, in fact, disqualify him? How do you disqualify somebody from running if he hasn't been convicted of criminal activity?
No, and you can't do that. The text of the Constitution is clear. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification. In other words, if you remove him from office, then you can disqualify him, but you can't just disqualify him. The word "and" is in the conjunctive, not the disjunctive. It doesn't say that you can remove him from office or disqualify him. It comes together. And if he's not in office, you can't disqualify him. The Senate has no role in picking candidates for future office. That's not their function. Their function is to remove a president who has explicitly violated the 4 criteria in the Constitution: treason, bribery, other high crimes, and misdemeanors. And President Trump doesn't fit into any of those qualifications. So impeachment is improper, and certainly simply putting him on trial to disqualify him is a classic Bill of Attainder, according to the Supreme Court of the United States.
Professor, you always impress me. I only would have said, just for you, I might have gone to law school. Thank you so much for being with us. It is
I wish you had.
A delight to have you here. And you can follow Professor Dershowitz on Twitter, for now at least, at Alan Dersh, and take a listen to the Dersh Show podcast.